What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another episode here on Finding Direction. And this week I'm sitting down with Shannon Evans. And a little bit about Shannon Evans. She is an abstract painter. And on this episode, some of the things we talk about is how she made the transition into being a full-time artist. We talk about the importance of reconnecting with your younger self, something that honestly, as Shannon spoke about it hit me in a really interesting way to look at life through this perspective. I know you're going to get some value from it. We also talk about owning the dream that has been sitting inside of you and so many other good things on this episode. If you have not yet, if you're joining us for the first time or if you're a regular here, make sure you subscribe so that you can hang out with us every single week as we bring you new content. And without further ado, let's dive in. Shannon Evans, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, hello. So happy to be here.
Yeah. And so as we kick this thing off, I would love it if you could share with our listener a little bit of a background as far as, who Shannon Evans is, what you do, and just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I am a abstract landscape oil painter. I have been creating really for as long as I can remember. And yeah, definitely I took every art class that I could in middle school, high school, and then I kind of was thinking like, oh, maybe actually kind of go after this seriously.
Yeah.
Um, and then I went to college for it. Um,
Nice.
I actually almost quit in college, but didn't. And then, yeah, I graduated with my BFA in drawing and painting. And then I've been a full-time artist for, I just hit a year in August.
Let's go. Congratulations.
So, thank you, thank you. Yeah,
Love
it's
it.
been going good.
Yeah. So fill me in. I'm curious, it sounds so you graduated then a year ago, is that correct?
No,
Or you
I
didn't
graduated.
go into artistry right away full time?
I did not go uh, like full time right away. I graduated college in 2018.
Okay. So fill us in a little bit there. So you graduate, you've been, doing art your whole life, you go to college for it. And obviously there's, with art, I have an aunt who she's an artist and, she didn't do it full time for a while, but eventually she got older and she does it full time now. And she's incredible. Obviously I'm biased. But one of the things in the art industry, right, is it's like, the saying of like people are like, oh, you can't make a living doing this. And so I'm curious, when you graduated originally, what was sort of your plan as you were like, okay, I got this degree and it's in art, but like kind of walk us through what that process was like for you.
Yeah, so I graduated and then, as you do, I got this entry level terrible job. um,
Yeah.
um, and it was in the art field, which it was kind of nice because I met a lot of other artists there who I'm still like really close friends with to this day. But also it was
Mm.
hard because it was kind of like not the greatest company. I'm not going to name any names,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it was just a very toxic work environment for
Mm.
like what we were doing and also just the office culture. And so I was struggling with that and I was barely painting during this time, which
Yeah.
I think was the longest I've gone without painting.
Yeah.
Um, and then I got a new job February 2020. Um, and
Mm.
then I started at this new job and it was a lot better. And then COVID hit.
Right.
Um, and then it was really like, fully remote. I was like, oh, I actually have all this time now to really paint. Even with the new job, I, wasn't painting. And it was really like a now or never kind of moment.
Yeah.
And so at the start of COVID, I like started posting on social media. I started putting my stuff up for sale and was just constantly building through through COVID. Because also I mean, everybody was online, so it was kind of, I don't want
Right.
to say, but like it worked out.
Yeah,
And the
everybody was on their phone. So if you're
yeah,
living on your phone and creating content on your phone, there's more people
yeah,
there than ever before.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, and then I was working still like my full time job and trying to build my business for a year, like during the height of COVID,
Yeah.
and then August 2021. Um, because my old job, they started forcing us back into the office, which I get, whatever. I
Yeah.
think that was like June or July, and it just got too hard to juggle. Um, and yeah, I was like really sad with it because obviously being a full time artist was always the goal, but I
Right.
kind of ended up jumping a little bit before I would have. But I really like couldn't take the because it wasn't just going back into the office. There was some other stuff going on, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to deal with this,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. It's
Um,
interesting. I think how, sometimes we have things we want to do with our life, but it takes, like they call it, right, the straw in the camel's back, right? Where it's like finally it takes something where it's like, all right, like I always wanted to be a full-time artist, but like I'm not going to do this. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go back into the office. I'm not going to do these other things. And it's almost a moment of like, F it. Like, okay, I'm not putting up with this. I might as well go all in on myself.
exactly, exactly. Um, yeah, and I did
Yeah.
it.
What
It's
was the
terrifying.
hardest? Yeah. What was the hardest part for you about making that decision to say, you know what? I know being an artist is like who I am at the core. I know it's something I've always connected with. It's something I want to do with my life. So what was the hardest part of like buying that dream that you had for yourself? Right. Cause it's like you knew being an artist was what you wanted to do, but 10 million times easier said than done. Right. Being like, I know that's what I want to do full time, and
Yeah,
harder to say, okay, I'm gonna go do it full time.
yeah. I think it was just kind of the on one side, just the logistics of it.
Hmm.
Like I went 6 months without health insurance. I've never done
Yeah.
that before, and that was terrible. I'm really fortunate now that I'm in a place where I can have health insurance, and it sounds
Yeah.
so basic, but it's like something you don't think about when
True.
you're employed. And also just like, and I'm still trying to get used to this. Like you don't know, there's no guarantees in your income anymore. Granted, with any job, you can be laid off in any moment. But especially
Yeah.
with this, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I saw a post the other day, and I'm going to butcher what it was, but the general gist of it was like you are where you should be. And sometimes it's hard to swallow that pill. Like you have the life that you deserve to have because you've put in the actions that have gotten you the results that you have. And it's like, if you want to create a better life for yourself, like you have to be the person that's going to take the action. You have to be the person that's going to do the painting. You have to be the person that's going to put your work into the world. You have to be the person that's going to, publicly declare what you're doing over and over and over. It's like you have to be like it all comes back to you. And I think there's a sense sometimes in life of like, well, it's a lot of pressure, or I don't want it all to be up to me. But it's like, well, if you can switch it and say, man, it is all up to me, and you can kind of lead it from that perspective, it can change everything, right? Because now you're owning it. It's like one of
Yeah,
the biggest breakthroughs I had when I was in my younger 20s was a moment where I was building a business and I had a realization, like, if I fail, this is my fault, and if I succeed, it's my fault. And it was like that
yeah,
moment of just ownership of being like, wow, like I'm actually in charge of the result regardless of what happens. And so if you know that, it almost gives you this power, right? It's like it is a little scary because you're like, well, if I screw it all up, then like it's my fault. But it's
yeah,
also a beautiful thing because it's like, wow, it's like I'm in charge of what's going to happen.
right? And like getting over that fear took me a while.
Yeah.
Because all 2019, when I was working at this job that I hated, I was like, it's not a happy person, you know? And like I wanted, obviously wanted to be a full-time artist, but
Yeah.
I wasn't doing anything to work towards that direction at all. So I was just complaining all the time, you know? And it's a hard pill to swallow that like,
Yeah.
okay, how many times are you gonna bitch about this? Oh, I don't know if I
Yeah,
can.
you're good. You're fine.
Okay. I don't know how many times I'm gonna complain about this and not do anything to change it, you know? And it's honestly, I feel like getting started is the hardest part. Because also, what's I feel like people, at least I didn't get, like, when you start out, because you have all this pressure, like, oh, what if people judge me? What if whatever? Like,
Yeah.
when you start out, nobody even sees your stuff. Like, so
Yeah.
no pressure, just do it. And
Yeah.
who gives a shit, you know, just start posting. Like, that's always my biggest piece of advice. Like, just post because you never know who's looking at your stuff. Like, some of the like people that have reached out to me just from like looking at my Instagram, it's
Yeah.
insane. I'm like, how did you find me? You
Yeah.
know? And it's just you just gotta start, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Someone once told it to me in this way. They're like, it's the 18 38 88 rule or something like that. And it's like when you're 18, you care so much about what everybody thinks. When you're
Yeah.
38, finally you're like, screw it. I don't care what anybody thinks. And then when you're 88, you're like, shit, nobody was thinking about me the whole time. Right. And it's like, if you could adopt that, 88-year-old version sooner, or even the 38-year-old version sooner, where it's like, you just don't care what other people think. It's like, it's, it's, uh, it's a freedom that you get. Right. And it's like an ease. It's like you can almost like drop your shoulders and relax a little bit because you're not so focused on what everybody else is thinking about you. Because the reality is, they're probably not thinking about you. Maybe they're thinking about what they're going to have for lunch. Maybe they're thinking about like what the hell they want to do with their own life, but they're probably not thinking about, oh my God, she posted that. And you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm curious if we jump forward a little bit in your story. So eventually you go, you
Mhm.
know what? I'm not going back to the office. I'm going to become a full-time artist. I'm not just going to say it. I'm going to live it. I'm going to do it. I'm curious, what was the biggest shift for you as you stepped into this new lifestyle of being like, okay, man, I'm waking up and nobody's telling me what to do. And I have all this time to, be creative and express myself and do art. Like, what were some of the bigger shifts for you as you stepped into um like this thing that you knew you were always called to do?
Yeah, I think it was, really getting used to like not having anybody tell me what to do,
Yeah.
all on me. And like sometimes, it's amazing, like super productive, my schedule, like I'm able to be on top of it. And other times I'm kind of like get overwhelmed with how much free time I have.
Yeah.
And it's still something like, you know, it's interesting to work with. Um, but honestly, the hardest part I always had, because I'm somebody I have really bad anxiety, and so this has really like pushed everything to the surface. Like I've learned a lot and working
Mm,
through it, but the hardest part was especially when I first started was, I'm already anxious, and then this is like
yeah.
absolutely 100%, nothing is guaranteed, everything is unknown, and so that was really hard for me in the beginning just to like be comfortable with what I had done, basically.
Yeah.
Because I definitely have, and I still have these moments. I'm like, what did I do? Like, why did I do this?
Yeah.
Because like a year, things are going well, but I still have slow months, and
Yeah.
it fluctuates a lot, and yeah, I don't know. Uh, that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So,
What are some of the things you do? Because I can find myself also sometimes where it's like if you have free time, right? It's like all of a sudden, for me at least, sometimes if I have too much free time, I like start, I don't know, I just like get in my head too much, right? And you're like, all of a sudden,
yeah,
it's like and then you just dribble off and don't get as much done as you should. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
like when you have those moments where you have this extra space and time, like are there any like, I don't know, tips, tricks, things you've learned about yourself that you do to kind of help bring yourself back to, okay, let me get back in the flow?
Yeah, I have really gotten to where I take like hour-long walks every day, actually, and
I
that
love that.
really, really like helps me center myself
Yeah,
and
yeah,
also get time, you know, and it's like how I end my days, because also I still, even though I'm self-employed, I still really like to follow kind of like a normal 9 to 5 because it's
yeah,
just what I'm used to, and like I still make sure to try and take weekends.
yeah.
Because another thing that's interesting is being self-employed and doing what you love. It is like true what they say. I mean, there's some stuff that isn't enjoyable, but it doesn't feel like work. And so
Yeah,
one thing I'm still working on is like trying to be good about taking breaks because for me it's enjoyable and like it doesn't feel like work. So when I
you could
do
just do
take
it
breaks,
forever.
like yeah, it's like, well, I could be working. Like I don't mind it that much, but also I've really like burnt myself out by doing that.
Yeah,
So working on it, working on
yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah. What are some of the things you do to keep yourself like self motivated? Because obviously, as being someone who's you know like doesn't have somebody telling you what to do, right? It's all based on your output and what you're going to do in the day. So like, how do you stay self motivated?
It's a good question. I think for me lately, it's kind of like a lot of gratitude of just like this is what I've always wanted and kind of like we can't screw it up here.
Yeah,
That could be a lot of pressure, but mainly just I'm trying to really see and like look at like how far I have come because I'm also it's very easy to get caught up in the day to day, you
right.
know. Um, and obviously, there's still so much I want to do. Um, but really, and also like, this is cheesy, but remembering like little Shannon and how
Yeah.
her mind would have just been absolutely blown that I'm doing this.
Yeah, that's a great
Uh,
perspective.
yeah, so trying to think of that and because you know it's hard sometimes to stay motivated. And I
Yeah.
still, I mean, I have periods. I'm not like somebody who's like always on. I do have periods where I'm like maybe I do think about quitting sometimes. Like I'll be honest, who
Yeah.
doesn't? But the important thing is that you don't.
Yeah.
That's like the normal feeling to have. You just have to sit with it for like a second, be like, okay, we're okay, and then keep doing what you're doing, you know?
Yeah. Someone once told me, one of my early mentors, he was like, never quit on a bad day. Right. Cause it's
Yeah.
like if you have a bad day, you like a lot of time we as humans make decisions based off of emotions, right? And it's like we have a bad day, something didn't go well, or like and all of a sudden, it's like we just want to give up on some of the dreams that we have for our life. But if we say, you know what, it's been a bad day, right? Bad days happen. Let me just, let this season kind of flow a little bit. And then, it's once you're back not having a bad day, it's like, well, obviously you're not going to quit. You're like, okay, well, let's keep going. Let's keep moving. So
Yeah.
it is interesting. And I think it's such a beautiful reminder. And I love the way that you said it is like sometimes you just think of little Shannon, right? It's like that like honestly blows my mind. I'm like, if I thought of little Stu right now, which just sounds weird to even say, he would be pumped. So it's such a beautiful reminder, I think, for the person listening to this right now to just say, hey, like just connect with your younger self for a second and say, hey, would little Chris, little Sarah, like they'd probably be so pumped for what you're doing in your life right now and so just like cheering you on, your biggest little fan. um and that allows you to kind of take a moment and just recenter and like, wow, like I'm doing some great stuff with my life, right? Because it's easy to sometimes get caught up in like, okay, what's going to happen in the future, and what am I going to do next, and how's this all going to work out? What's my grand, big, giant plan? And then it's like, well, at the same time, like the present moment's the only thing that you really have in your life. So yes, ideally have an idea of where you want to go, but at the same time, you can't be so focused on that you forget to actually enjoy your life.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Definitely.
yeah, I've 100% been there myself. So I'm curious then, as you look at, let's say, the next, I don't know, couple of years of your journey, what are a few of the things you see coming up next for you?
Um, yeah, well, I'm really excited because I'm actually looking into grad school right now.
Heck
Um,
yeah.
it's something I've always been interested in, but obviously really got put on pause with the pandemic. Um, and, really looking into that opportunity. Because I would love to further my education in art and be
Yeah.
able to push in kind of that direction. Also, like teaching at the university level is something I'm really interested in.
Love that.
Um, maybe doing that part time and then having the like
Yeah.
artists on the side. Well, I guess it wouldn't be full time, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so that's something I'm really interested in right now, and
Yeah.
that's kind of taking up my time, which is exciting. And already, like with the application process, I'm looking at my work in a really interesting way and kind of already thinking of new ideas. Because it is really important, like, after school, after my undergrad, it was really important to kind of find my voice without my professors' voices
Yeah.
in my head, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I feel like I'm at a point where, there is only so much you can do on your own. And I feel like not that I'm stuck in my work, because that's not true. I have a lot of fun doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I think it would just be really cool to see how the work could get pushed and having that extra education in art. So yeah, that's the
Yeah.
main thing I'm looking.
Love it. And it's a cool perspective too, just on like, before you were doing something you didn't love and you really connect with art. And it's like, okay, well, now it's finding other ways to incorporate that into your life.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. It's like, okay, teaching university and, helping people, you know, educate themselves on art and sort of take a similar path to what you have. Like, it's a beautiful way to still give back and contribute and, have an income and have it all surround art. Right. And then still be able to do your art and like, showcase that to the world. It's a beautiful, shift versus sometimes it can be easy to say, well, no, art's my side thing. And then I have this other thing that doesn't fit. It's like, well, no, I can have a full thing that surrounds art and then I can be a full-time artist as well. Right. And I can have those blend. So cool.
yeah.
Love it. Well, Shannon, I'm curious if
I,
people want to continue to hang out with you, see what you're up to, follow your work, see your work. I'm curious, where's the best place for people to find you, hang out with you, and continue to stick around your world?
so my main platform is Instagram.
Heck
It
yeah.
is at shannon.evans.art. I have a website as well, shannonevansart.com. And then one thing
Heck yeah.
I'm working on is like hopefully getting into like YouTube and that kind of video space, but
Yeah.
it's still a work in
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Life is a work in progress. So
Yeah,
heck
definitely.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm curious. I have one last question for you. And it's a
Mhm,
question we ask all our guests because we want to help people find direction, but do it through action. And
mhm.
so I'm curious for you, like, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
Ooh. Um, well, I guess I'll say like in conjunction with other visual artists or like artists in that thing, it's just kind of like just start sharing your work in whatever capacity, like online.
Mm,
Just get it out there. It can be works in progress, like it doesn't even have to be finished pieces.
Yeah.
Doesn't even have to be good. Like I've shared art that's not good, you know? Like
Yeah.
just get it out there. Just get people to see it, you know?
Yeah. Love it. It's someone once said, and I'm going to butcher this again, but it's like imperfect action is better than perfect action because it doesn't,
Exactly.
perfect action doesn't
Yeah.
exist. Right. So allow yourself to act imperfectly and just take a step after. And if you keep taking one step after the other, after imperfect step, like you're going to find yourself in an incredible place versus the person that's sitting there for days, weeks, years going, well, it's not quite perfect yet. Right. So I love that.
Right.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Shannon, thank you again so much for joining us today. It's been a joy to dive through your story, and obviously excited to see you continue to grow and do everything that you're doing. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was lovely.
Absolutely.